The Chris Eubank Jr. Renault Quinlan fight for the IBO Super Middleweight World title was taking place on February 4th at the Kensington Olympia in London. It was going to take place at some leisure centre in North London, which was a facility that was built, I believe, for the 2012 Olympics. It's apparently been moved from there now. It's now going to take place at the Kensington or London Olympia, which is also an Olympic facility, but not from the 2012 Olympics, from the previous time, many, many years before when London hosted the Olympics. So it's a more well-known venue and it's not a leisure centre if the Eubanks want to use that for bragging rights or whatever. I know they like to go back and forth with Billy Joe. Excuse me. But what you can see on screen right here is the full fight card as it stands at the moment. I'm not sure if they're going to add any more fights to it, but at the moment, this is the fight card. And to be honest with you, this is actually a pretty good card. I'm still not convinced this is pay-per-view worthy, but then again, the pay-per-view is much cheaper than a normal pay-per-view on Sky, for example. This pay-per-view is £10, basically. $9.95 or whatever it is, £10. Again, I still think this kind of card should be on free, but it's a good card. If this was a free card, you'd have to say people would be ranting and raving about it and singing its praises because you've got some good fights on there. Now, most people would say that the headline fight, the top of the bill, is the weakest fight on the card. And it might prove to be. Certainly on paper, it looks like it could be. And that's obviously Eubank Jr. versus Quinlan. But below that, you've got Andrew Selby taking on Adrian Diale. I'm not sure who Diale is, but he's had a hell of a lot of fights. What's he had? Like 46 fights, and he's won most of them. Andrew Selby's only had 7 fights. So that should be interesting. Below that, you've got Kid Galahad taking on Joseph Agbeko. Now, Agbeko has seen better days, yes, but he's still a high-level operator. He's still been in there with some of the best fighters in the entire sport, like Guillermo Rigondeaux, and he's never been stopped, Joseph Agbeko. All of his 5 losses have been on points, over 12 rounds. So for the Eubanks to be able to get him as an opponent for Kid Galahad on seemingly such short notice, I think that's a decent opponent there for Kid Galahad. That's a guy who's been in there with some extremely good fighters, who's very experienced, who's only lost 5 times in 36 fights. So yeah, I think that's a good opponent. Then you've got Adam Etches versus John Ryder. That's a big domestic dust-up. A lot of people are looking forward to that. Below that, you got David Price versus Christian Hammer. And Hammer is coming off a good win over Erkan Tepe, who was the last person to knock out David Price. So there is some intrigue there. There is some interest to see if David Price, in a roundabout way, can kind of get revenge on Erkan Tepe by beating the guy who just beat Tepe. We'll see. Below that, you got Chris Congo. Now, I've never seen Chris Congo fight. He's had 2 professional fights so far, but I have heard a lot of good things about him. So I look forward to seeing what Chris Congo's all about. That's a welterweight. They haven't announced his opponent. So below that, you've got Lucas Balingol, Jordan Dennis, and Jordan Gill. And just like with Chris Congo, their opponents, as far as BoxRec anyway, haven't been confirmed yet. Overall, I have to say, again, that's a good card, people. That's not a terrible card. And when the pay-per-view is much cheaper than normal, how much can you grumble at it? You can't grumble as much as you would have done if it was £20. That's for sure. Again, I'm going to maintain this should be free, but it's a good card. If that was a Saturday night fight night on Sky, nobody would be complaining. I'm not sure. Again, I've heard conflicting reports about which fights are actually going to be free to air. Some people say that the entire undercard is going to be free and it's only going to be Eubank Jr. that's actually pay-per-view versus Quinlan. Other people are saying no, the early undercard fights will be free to air, but the main undercard fights, the likes of, I guess, maybe David Price and upwards, or maybe Adam Etches, John Ryder and upwards, will be behind the pay-per-view wall. It remains to be seen, and I guess we'll see. But let me know what you guys think about this card. Surely you have to agree this is a decent card. It's a decent domestic level British card. Yeah? Pay-per-view fair? No, but still a good card. How many of you guys will actually be buying it? I've seen a few people who before were saying, This is terrible. This is awful. But as the fight card has been built and more fighters have been added, I've seen people do a complete 180 and say, you know what? Now they've dropped it to £10. I might actually buy this, because what else am I going to do on a Saturday night? I could, buy a curry and a few beers and it's going to cost more than £10. Why not just spend it on watching Eubank Jr. fight and all these other people on the card fight? It's much better money well spent. The money is much better spent that way. So I don't know. Let me know how you feel in the comment section below. It's your boy Hatman. I'm out.